Hello and welcome. Today's project is all about the challenges moving forward in 2023. If you've decided to make some changes, to sacrifice certain things in your life so that things could get better because you're not happy where you are, then I commend you. I am so thrilled for you that you're making this decision. I know when I started my anxiety recovery years ago, I decided that everything around me, it just wasn't working. And I thought about opposite day. I thought about, well, what if I just started doing things that were completely unconventional and unnatural for me to do, that placed myself in uncomfortable situations, that expanded my knowledge and wisdom. And I decided to do that. So what that means is then I had to sacrifice the things that I thought weren't working in order for me to progress or get better in some way. So that was interesting because when I started to sacrifice one or two things in my life, there would be this space that opens up. And within that space, you have to begin to fill that space with something else. So I started to fill it with meditation or sitting in a coffee shop reading a book that I'm not familiar with, or listening to a podcast that I'm not familiar with, or going to the gym, signing up for a gym membership, or going for walks in nature rather than spending time with that negative friend, or going on dating apps just to fulfill certain needs and and to fulfill that pain and discomfort within me. So yes, when you make a sacrifice, there is another problem that shows up, which is, what do I replace that with? And then you're going to feel the cognitive dissonance, right? That's an interesting thing. So what that means is, when you start to do something that you're not familiar with, you're thinking differently, you're doing something differently, you're behaving differently. You're going to get some sort of resistance, right? The brain is not familiar. It's like a part of your identity is burning away, and your body goes, no, I want to hold on to that identity because I know that identity. I'm familiar with it, even if it is pain, even if it is some crutch, right? That's not serving you in the long run. It doesn't matter if it's something that's regular to you and that's familiar to you. Well, hey, you're going to feel that resistance, definitely. So going into this new year, give yourself permission to be bad at this recovery. Because if you go into this recovery thinking, oh, I'm going to start meditation and everything's going to be perfect, I'm going to sacrifice this and everything is going to be perfect, that's not the best approach, because perfection is unattainable and you will fail, because you will notice, and I noticed within myself, that when I would sacrifice something, I noticed I would go back to the thing sometimes, and I would be like, whoa, Brad, why did you go back? It feels like I'm automated. It feels like I have no control over this thing. And that's exactly right, because these systems that I was contending with are deeper and more sophisticated than I thought they were. So that is a huge thing to realize. But you're not going to start something if you think that it has to be perfect. Think of it like, well, I'm going to be bad at it, but I'd rather fail forward than to stay where I am. So the third challenge I want to talk about today is that you have to confront past uncomfortable moments. Now, this is huge. Right now, I am doing a week-long challenge of reframing exercises every day. Now, this is something I did routinely, and what's the word? I guess routinely is a good word, when I started my recovery, because I was carrying around a lot of memories, baggage that I needed to confront so that I could move on forward, rather than being stuck in the past. A lot of me was stuck there because I was holding on to guilt, I was holding on to shame, I was holding on to embarrassment and fears. And I noticed within myself that when I would reframe one particular memory, I felt a different emotion over the memory. You change the meaning of the memory, you change the emotion. So reframing requires you to do some hard lifting. So you have to go back to a memory that is causing you a lot of discomfort. You did something to somebody, you cheated on somebody, somebody humiliated you, somebody cheated on you, somebody did something to you, whatever. You go back. If it's causing you some sort of negative emotion, that means a part of you has not fully fleshed it out and understood what happened back there. So go back to the memory. That's difficult. It brings up a lot of emotion. I'll leave a link to a reframing exercise below. You can do this today. So go back, relive the emotion, and then ask yourself some really powerful, important questions. What happened back then? What did I feel? I felt embarrassed. I felt guilty. I felt ashamed. I felt alone in that situation. And then ask yourself, what did I learn at that point? Well, when I would ask myself this question, I would view the other person that maybe humiliated me in high school, maybe, because that's what happened at one point. And I would view them differently. Oh, they were going through a tough time, probably at home. Maybe their parents were giving them a hard time. Maybe they were going through something really tragic. They were young and stupid. They didn't know what they were talking about. And so that's a reframing exercise, looking at that situation from a different perspective, so you change the emotion, right? But then also ask yourself, what would I do differently? Now that I'm older and more wise, what would I do differently in that situation? Looking at it from a different point of view, like a fly on the wall, for example. And that's interesting because when I would do that within myself, I noticed that I would do stuff differently and I felt better. I felt more confident. I felt like I have more control over the past than I actually realize. Because when I fully understand what happened back then I no longer need to hold on to it like it's a puzzle. Like the pieces are being put together. I'm letting it go and I'm moving on. That's important. So yes, confront those memories and you can then detach yourself from the past. The second challenge of 2023 should be you place yourself in discomfort so that you show yourself that your body and mind is capable of much more. So when I was suffering from health anxiety, I viewed myself as a weak person. And then when I started to go out into the world and face my panic attacks in public, something interesting happened. I felt the discomfort, the heart palpitation, the dizziness, the nausea. I felt like I was losing control. But then I stayed in the situation because I learned from my mentor that if you stay and ride the wave of panic, you can then make new associations over the situation. So I would stay, I would ride the wave of pain, discomfort, and then at the end of it all, I would say, wow, I'm capable of much more. I did not faint. I did not throw up. I did not go to the hospital. I did not have a heart attack. This is like, and then I realized that, wow, I'm capable of much more. I'm leaving so much on the table and I'm not pursuing so much of my potential. And so this is what's so important. If you're afraid to go to the gym because when you run on the treadmill, you're afraid of having a panic attack or you're afraid of fainting, start small, set the goal. Set the bar a little bit high. So you go to the gym, you run on the treadmill, then you start to feel dizzy. Then what do? You stay there, you ride the wave. So what if I fail? So what? You start to challenge the thoughts. And then when you start to run a little bit further, you start to push past your boundaries, then something interesting happens. You start to notice that, wait a second, even though my mind is saying I'm going to faint, I'm not fainting. Interesting. You start to discover a new side of yourself. And this is why I love cold showers, is because when I was suffering from health anxiety, I would get into the cold shower. Before I even got in there, my mind would go, don't go in there. It's pain. It's suffering. What if this happens? What if it's not good for you? And I'd be like, okay, shut up. I'm going in anyways. I'm going to bypass this weak voice within me, this 10-year-old voice. I would get in the cold shower. It would be painful, but I would get out and I would be like, man, I did it. I actually feel better. I feel more awake. I feel like I can do anything right now. If I can take on this challenge, then I could take on the next challenge. And that's the beauty of facing discomfort, is that when you do that, especially early on in the day, it builds momentum, and then you're going to face other challenges throughout the day. You're more likely going to face other challenges. But if you keep hiding yourself in the dark, then the challenges grow and you shrink. And this brings me to number one. The number one challenge of 2023 should be curious. Learn, grow your mind, read anything you can get your hands on, because these people who are writing books and who have gone through anxiety and trauma and tragedy, they write about the wisdom they've accumulated and they give it to you. So think of all those great books out there that you're not reading that pertain to this great wisdom that you can embody. So grow. Learn continuously. Step outside of your comfort zone. These people have something to say and they learn some valuable lessons. Take those lessons, because when I was suffering, my family didn't know what I was going through. They didn't have the tools and the knowledge to help me. My partner didn't have the tools and the knowledge. My friends, they did not. So I had to find somebody who was wise, who went through tragedy, who went through anxiety, panic, and who have gotten better. And then I started to learn about myself. I learned that I was a cheater. I was a manipulator. I was a liar. I had a lot of darkness within me. I had to understand. So then I started to learn about Carl Jung. And Carl Jung, the real famous clinical psychologist, he talks about the shadow, the dark parts of us that we do not want to confront and contend with. So when I started to understand myself and that dark side, I was able to control it. Like in Harry Potter, right? He has the piece of Voldemort within him, but he learns to control it and not walk down that path. So that's what happened within myself. And then I understood the darkness within other people. Because once I started to understand that within myself, I understood that in other people around me. And then I understood why people hurt me, said that to me in high school, or hurt me physically, right? And that's the thing. You understand people and their motives, and you understand the evil in their heart because you understand yourself more. That's why before any real change in your external world happens, you have to change your internal world. You have to understand yourself on a deeper level. And that builds assertiveness. You move from naive, dependent person to someone who is assertive the more you understand yourself. So grow, read things. Just read and slow down your life a little bit. Focus on the things that truly matter. These things matter. This knowledge from these books, this discipline. Running around with my head cut off, that was my normal years ago. But then I slowed down. I was like, whoa, you know what? I'm going to learn. I'm going to take a breath, develop a morning routine, and give back to myself. Because don't you love yourself? Don't you care about yourself? You should. And that's where I'm going to leave you on today's video. Here are some book recommendations just to get you started of some unbelievable stories of people who went through severe tragedy and overcame this tragedy. One book that blew me away last year was reading Naomi Park's In Order to Live. She lived in North Korea, the tyranny of North Korea, starving and the struggles that she went through there, and then escaping North Korea. It was an unbelievable, terrifying book. The next book I recommend is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. His suffering in the concentration camps and the meaning that was brought upon him while that he was in the midst of that suffering is truly remarkable. Another book I recommend is David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. Someone who came from abuse. He came from just hell on earth. He came from the most suffering you can ever imagine, and he overcame that suffering. And he, in the book, Can't Hurt Me, he goes through that process of how he got himself out of that suffering and how he built toughness and he built this strong identity for himself and how he healed from all of this trauma. And I think that's good enough for today. I've read more books, Viktor Frankl, David Goggins, Naomi Park's, and there are some other book recommendations I have, but I can't think of it at the moment. So if I do, I'll leave it in the description below. But thank you, everybody. Rise above anxiety. I will see you on the next video. Bye for now. Make sure to leave your comments below. Subscribe so that you'll be the first to know whenever I release a new video. And rise above anxiety. I'll see you next time.